So let's get into it here. Before we get into the actual Community Energy Initiative topic itself, I wanted to spend a minute just commenting on really how we do meet our energy needs and really where community programs fit into that picture. We basically get our energy from the supply side, which is really our generation, your utility. Our peaking plants, it's all the hardware, the transmission, distribution. It's the purchase of actual energy on the transmission distribution lines. But there's also a supply side. And these are where our programs live. We actually create energy surplus through efficiency and conservation programs. So now we talk about community energy programs. We're looking really at energy conservation and energy efficiency programs. And I'd like to comment that those terms are not interchangeably, although many people often use them so. Energy efficiency is using less energy to do something. It's using a CFL instead of an incandescent light bulb. Conservation is simply not using that light at all. It's turning it off. So there is a difference, and community programs really encompass all of those. And the unique part of a community energy initiative or any other program is its ability to influence the other components of supply side, which is really our energy codes and standards, whether it's your local municipal codes or state and national energy codes, and also demand response. A lot of our local utilities have demand response programs. And I actually just want to take a minute to kind of define what demand is, because a lot of times we talk about energy and demand, and for those of you who aren't in the utility sector, there is a very specific definition. Demand is how much energy we're using at any one point in time. So really, it's our speedometer. So at a snapshot in time, how much energy are we using? Peak demand meaning the maximum demand at any one point in time. Efficiency, or excuse me, energy usage is like our odometer. It's how much energy we're using over the course of a set period of time. So those are two specific definitions. So when we're talking demand response, we're trying to reduce that peak demand that's available through a specific program. So that's how community programs kind of fit into energy picture as a whole. So what is a community energy initiative? Basically, it's a locally based effort. It's not targeting necessarily one specific end user, but it's looking at a specific geographic region and trying to influence both behavior and technology usage within that locale. It's actually a combination of a resource acquisition program as well as a market transformation program. It's encompassing incentives potentially, education, awareness. It's exchanging knowledge and information. It's getting everyone on the same page with what the benefits of energy efficiency and conservation are, and then actually incorporating programs that actually create movement, create action within your community. So that's really what we're talking about when we discuss community energy initiatives or programs or efficiency programs on a community basis. There are a number of them that have happened across the country. And I'd like to mention, especially for those of you who aren't familiar or haven't done a community program to date, there's a lot of places to actually learn from other people's experiences. The Association of Energy Service Providers, AESP.org, has actually a group that meets weekly or monthly, to get together and discuss their experiences. People ask questions. They learn from each other. It's a good forum to learn what others have in their experiences and take that into your own program. There's a number of different examples on the slides here. There's state programs. There are even some programs here in the state of Wisconsin which focus on a specific community. Burlington and Brilliant are two examples. So there's a lot of experiences you can learn from, and people are very willing to share in the Community Energy Initiative arena. So I encourage you to go seek out additional information and do some research as you embark on this. What we'll talk about today is really kind of your high-level basics of program design. But I encourage you to actually learn from others. Now, Andrea actually just has the results of our poll here. And actually, wow, right across the board. So energy and environment is the highest. We have folks from local government professionals and also community planners. So we have a wide mix of folks. So I'm actually going to be talking from both the utility perspective as well as the community leader perspective as well. Thanks, Andrea. All right. So when we talk about the energy planning process, there are really 6 key steps. Some of these were addressed in the 3 previous webinars. Forming your vision and goals, developing a baseline. And I'd say not just an energy use baseline, but the knowledge base, what's going on in your community. A resource baseline, evaluation of alternatives, your different strategies you can incorporate in your community, the plan and timeline, and measuring success. So today we're going to focus on 4 and 5. Evaluation of different alternatives, different ways to consider what should go into your program, as well as defining what your program should look like, and then a high-level overview of an example plan and timeline. So how do we actually figure out what we want to accomplish? Who's going to lead it? Who develops it? Why are we even doing it? I mean, that's actually a key question I think a lot of people even fail to ask as they embark on this. They're very enthusiastic about getting something going in their community, and they don't really define what it is they're trying to accomplish. So that's why this design process, program design, is so critical to the success of your program. A number of folks who use the term program design get very intimidated. They think it's this long, very resource, energy-intensive process. It's very high level. It's too detail-oriented, but I really encourage you to embrace it, because how's the old adage go? It's like you don't plan to fail, you fail to plan, basically. And without actually a focused program design phase of your program, it's going to have a much more limited chance of success. So everything that we're talking about today is really program designing. So let's go through some basic program design concepts. Okay, identifying your target market. We know you've identified your community, but there are numerous different subsectors within your community that you need to consider whether or not you want to target them for your specific program. Identify how you will define success. There's a couple of themes that are going to be coming through the message today. One is leveraging, the second is metrics, and the third is evaluation. So knowing what you're going to define success, what does success look like to you, be able to develop specific metrics that you can measure, and then be able to communicate those. So those are really critical. How are you going to define whether your initiative was successful or not? And what are the barriers that are keeping folks from doing this right now? Often we say that we want energy efficiency to happen in our community. We want to consider renewable options. We want to look at sustainability as a whole for our community. But we don't really know how that's perceived within the community. What really is the barrier to it happening on its own? The reason we do programs is to help jumpstart something that's not happening naturally. Well, we have to understand why that's not happening naturally to actually design our program and encourage that action to take place within our community. Brainstorming strategies to move the target market. The community as a whole can be more of an education awareness, but how are you going to move the local businesses to take action? How are you going to move your local residents to actually take action? So the actual brainstorming of strategies and concepts, and we'll go over some sample strategies later, but actually brainstorming and developing that list of how you're actually going to incorporate that. You don't actually necessarily have to start everything from scratch. There are a number of national and statewide efforts that you can leverage also, so don't be intimidated by the fact that you may have to create something on your own. And we'll go over some of that also. Identifying existing efforts. So again, leveraging. The Department of Energy on the national level, as well as the EPA, have numerous programs, a lot of them targeted specifically for schools that you can use as a first step or as a component of your energy initiative. But leveraging existing opportunities, what's already going on within your community that you can leverage on and that you can tie into. Not only does it help with the workload, but it also helps create legitimacy for your program because it's something that's already previously accepted that you can then leverage off of. A lot of times the enthusiasm for something is so great in the beginning and then it wanes because you can't get traction in your community. So a way to get traction is actually leverage on something. So identifying what those opportunities are. And again, defining metrics. And the metrics are going to vary, again, across the different goals of your program. Remember, it's a combination of a market transformation program and a resource acquisition program. So you're trying to save energy, but then also create an awareness and behavior change as well in combination with that. So identifying what the specific barriers you're trying to overcome and how you're going to track that success with specific metrics, whether it's energy savings, whether it's % increase in awareness in the community, whether it's an overall reduction in peak demand in your community, whatever it may be, develop some very specific metrics to track. So there's some very specific caveats I want to mention also. Again, different segments of your community will need different strategies. No one size is going to fit all, even though you can have a very a unifying theme to overarch the entire program, like Michigan Saves, perhaps, or I know the one in Brilliant is I Can Conserve. So there's a specific theme for the entire community, but then they have targeted strategies under that umbrella. So again, not one size fits all, and you can't just do one specific thing for your community to realize success in all sectors. funding. I often call this the F word. People tend not to talk about it, but programs like this take funding, they take money. Where is that going to come from? Even if you're not doing financial incentives, there's messaging, there's marketing, there's potential for staff, which we'll talk about also. So what's the funding, what's the budget, and what's the time frame of that budget? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? Is it 5 years? Making sure that you have funds available to support your effort and the goals you're trying to achieve. And what this also goes to is, do your funding actually allow you to meet your goals? Make sure that your goals and your metrics actually can be met by the funding that you have available for your program. And money versus personal motivation. Sometimes you will need an economic driver to get some sectors to move within your community. Other times it's just a more of a viral, neighborhood issue, and it's more behavior change. But again, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, you may need an economic driver to get people to go over that tipping point and actually move to take action. So developing program goals. Now there's programmatic and sector again, but you need to have targets not just for your own individual, but to actually communicate to the community as a whole. If you can't actually articulate what you're trying to accomplish, again, you're going to have very little success in gaining traction in your community. So not only is it your unifying concept, but having a very clear way of communicating what you're trying to accomplish and the associated benefits with that. Whether you're targeting the your municipal and local government buildings, schools, businesses in your community, the residents, is there a targeted large industrial component of your community? Is there a large hard-to-reach market? Is there a multifamily area that you're trying to engage that has a split incentive of owners versus tenants? So understanding and how do you actually convey the goals for the program to these different sectors? So they'll need different messaging to have the associated benefits. And again, you're going to have to do a little translation too, because their benefits and why they want to participate may not be why you're initiating the program to begin with. So start with some market research. And again, market research often makes dollar signs come up in people's eyes, but it doesn't have to be a funding-intensive effort. But it is critical during the program design phase to do this. You need to know what's going on within your community. Not only develop a baseline, where am I starting at, but to identify if there's even a need for what you're trying to accomplish in your community. You have this perception, but is that validated by going out in the community and talking with folks and connecting and finding out what the real needs, or finding out what their perceptions are? So market research is critical. Is it costs that are the barrier? Is it too new? Is it technologies? They're not comfortable with renewables because they're just not familiar with them. They haven't been in their community. They don't have personal experience. Is it not available in your area? Some areas have challenges with locating efficient products or getting those available to their local dealerships. So perhaps working with dealers and upstream connections with your distributors, and perhaps doing point of purchase in retailers. So defining what the needs are. So going out and doing some market research. What's already going on within your community? What can you leverage? What are the needs? And what are the barriers? So that is actually critical. That is step one of your program design, is finding out what's already going on within your community. It helps you define the needs, but also your potential. Okay, sometimes some of the projects that I've been a part of, their goals are too big, and so they seem like they're failures simply because they set their goals too high to begin with, and they weren't able to achieve those. So it helps you realize what the potential is and what's achievable in both the near term and the long term within your community. So informal surveys, focus groups, simply going out and talking to people. What are their concerns? What do they know? What don't they know? What does the education component of your energy initiative need to be comprised of? And how can that be worked into existing efforts? So focusing on the market research is probably the only way that you're really going to have true success. Because without that, if you don't know what you don't know, how can you design a program to meet needs that you don't know if they exist or not? Now for market research, so this is all part of program design. So it's market research. And then we start thinking about, okay, part of this is our staffing, our administration of the program. Who is actually going to do all this? The programs that I've had experience with have identified a specific champion or an ambassador, an individual that is seen as the linchpin in the community of where this program comes from, where they can go with questions, They are the key messenger in the community. They're the ones who go out and work with the folks. They aren't necessarily the only person by any means, but they are the person that the community sees as critical and actually as the champion for them. So consider a paid position. Now, I know this is contrary to what a lot of volunteer programs type to do. A lot of community initiatives in the past have been very volunteer-based, and they've suffered from that, unfortunately. There's been low turnover. Volunteers, as passionate as they are, it's too hard to depend on them for continuity in the delivery of a program. Okay? And no matter how dedicated they are, there's always going to be attrition as time goes by, because community programs are not going to be over in 3 to 6 months. These are, 12-month initiatives or potentially longer if successful. And consider involving local government. Again, this helps create legitimacy. Whether it's a citizen group that's trying to encourage this, whether it's the local government itself or the local utility, a combination of those groups helps make sure there's legitimacy because more than one group is helping to deliver the program. And an individual isn't just seeing that a program delivered by the utility perhaps is just doing it for their own benefit. A lot of people are skeptical when the message only comes from one entity. So community energy initiatives are truly most successful when they engage multiple partners within the community. And build a team. Okay, this is actually how you start building your team behind your energy champion for your program as well. Is have someone represented from each sector, whether it's the businesses, the industrial, the residential, the school, the municipal building operator and manager, whomever that may be, but build this team of folks to help support your energy champion. Not only do they help with actually delivery of the program, they'll help deliver the message back to their own segments, they'll help you brainstorm appropriate strategies for that target sector, and they'll develop continuity and institutional knowledge, because there will be some turnover over the course of a program just because lives happen, people change, people move, whatever it may be, budgets are cut sometimes. But it helps create continuity and institutional knowledge for the program. So engaging the community. So you have a champion and ambassador, you've done planning. These are very high-level design concepts here. Now you have to engage the community. And this is tricky because a lot of us who work in the energy efficiency community speak our own language. We talk KWs, KWH, therms, peak demand reductions, peak shifting, peak loads. We need to translate all of that into messaging that the citizens of the community can actually understand and into benefits that they understand are personally important to themselves. So that is a very critical component of the program design, is not only what we can do, but how are we going to message this? How are we going to engage the community by translating these benefits to something that they will be realized by themselves? So spending some time on that is a very critical part of your program design. Okay, so energy. We talk about energy, KWH, therms, KW. Translating that into dollars is really the key way of doing that. Every community has a different cost per KWH, cost per therm. Figure out what it is for your community. What's the average? It's going to vary by business versus residential sector, of course, but kind of figure that out and use local metrics to actually drive benefits and messaging. And actually translate potential savings for your community. Don't just say in general. Create specific examples. Target a specific demonstration, and we'll talk about that, so you can actually translate an action into a financial benefit. And not just financial benefit, but what are the social benefits as well. The non-energy benefits is something we often fail to consider when we embark on an energy initiative in the community. What are the non-energy benefits that can be realized? Is it a sociological issue? Do we create a better, more efficient low-income housing? Is it sustainability efforts? Is it improved water quality through more efficient pumping so we can afford more pumping for our wastewater treatment? Whatever it may be, but incorporate those non-energy benefits, because those combined with the financial benefits are really what, in successful programs, are what engage the community as a whole and actually help you realize the energy savings that you're trying to accomplish in the development of the program to begin with. And then identifying where this ranks. Where do your goals rank within the goals of that specific community? Is economic development the driver? In most typical small communities, that's a large thing, expanding their tax base. How can you use that specific goal? How can you leverage a community energy initiative to actually help reach that goal as well? Is it school improvement? Is there specific redevelopment of your downtown? Is there a way to re-energize the downtown, the Main Street USA, through a community energy initiative to help them reduce operating costs? So there's a number of different ways to help drive existing agendas within a community by developing your community energy efficiency initiative and leveraging the two off of each other. So knowing what's important to that community is critical to developing the messaging and developing the program. So how do you make energy use support these goals, which they do? This is the part that's hard. Again, communicating this. And I do talk about this more than once. I just talked about it again. I've talked about it now because the communication part is where usually these programs break down. You have to be proactive. A lot of times when we're developing our communication strategies, especially in the most recent past, we're starting to see that the Facebooks and the Twitters and the social marketing, we're seeing that, and we're kind of using those as a crutch, and we're getting away from the very proactive communication that needs to happen to make these programs successful. So while they can actually benefit to reach a specific target sector, you need to be very proactive in your communication and how you're communicating the benefits to your community. So don't just depend on those avenues for communication, but make sure that you're considering what specific avenues to get at all sectors. Okay, so what's your rallying cry? Now, don't get me wrong here. A unifying theme is really quite important. Actually, the fun part of developing your energy program is what is it that everyone's going to use as their central unifying concept? What is it? Whether it's playing off your local school mascot, whether it's working with your local utility to develop an efficiency-themed, conservation. Michigan Saves with dollar cents. It's big savings for small business. Whatever it is. But having a central rallying cry is actually the fun part of your program design. It actually helps with your messaging. And it's a way to start engaging the community, especially if you're playing off something that's already important to them within their community. And from a messaging standpoint, we would encourage that if there's some way to leverage something, if you're up in Rhinelander, you're probably going to want to play off the Hodag, but whatever it is, something that you can locally tie on to as you develop your unifying concept. We found that that's actually very helpful as far as engaging the community. So again, your messaging. Marketing and communication is important, but don't kill the budget with marketing. It's so easy to do that. A lot of times we've seen very expensive, very intricate websites. That's a very passive marketing strategy. Again, proactive is the key for community energy initiatives. You need to get out there. You can't expect the community to come to you, whether it's residents or businesses or the municipality itself, but you need to be proactive in getting out there. So even something as simple as a piece of plywood with a thermometer on the town square to say where you're at with reaching your specific goals for your specific initiative, getting out there and actually reaching out to them. So don't spend large budgets on a lot of the technology. They're very useful. They're very useful because some folks will be proactive. And don't develop perhaps your own URL when it comes to a specific website. Leverage something else. Every municipality has their own website already. To add on to that page. But again, try to get at people the way they're already getting their information. If you try and create a new avenue, it's going to be very difficult and actually going to be very expensive from a marketing and communication standpoint to get people to go there. So don't even go there. Leverage what you can. Be proactive and be aware that social marketing is not the same as viral marketing. It's like the social networking sites, again, they have a place for a specific target sector, but using, the viral marketing within the community is probably much more benefit than just depending on the social marketing. So, yes. All right. So when you talk about your messaging, too, it's very goal dependent. Again, most community energy initiatives are a combination of market transformation and resource acquisition efforts. It's behavior change combined with actually a call to action to incorporate specific technology that's more efficient into buildings and our homes. So the messaging for those specific goals is going to vary. Consider a staged approach with your messaging. Don't do everything all at once. Start off with one broad theme and then target your specific sectors. And it doesn't have to go to every community. If you're targeting specific businesses, you don't need to blanket the entire residential community with specific business messaging. So consider a staged approach with your messaging. And leverage, 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 leverage. Funding is usually the downfall of programs, so anytime you can play off something, you can leverage, you can add on to something else, use it. And again, viral marketing concepts, low budget. Don't depend on social marketing necessarily, but viral marketing, getting key advocates within a specific community to get out there, door-to-door campaigns, door hangers. Everyone's got a local newspaper, play off that, hang stuff up in the local coffee shop. Wherever it is where people congregate, try and use those local community leaders and community places to help drive your message home. Okay, so developing your program. Putting all the pieces together. Okay, now we start getting down to it. You really want to work in combination. The local utility and the local municipality really need to work in concert. You really need to work together. Again, it's a legitimacy issue. It's a potential funding issue. It's a staffing issue. It's different ways to communicate with different segments of the community. So actually that combination, and if you can tie in a third party, even a community or citizen action group, that actually creates your triumvirate of a real strong messaging. Leverage existing programs. Okay? You can create a unifying concept that just helps package already existing programs. You don't need to create your own thing for every sector again. There's Energy Star, there's LEAD for Neighborhood Development, there's Solar America Cities, Sustainable Communities Initiatives, Main Street USA is another one. Use those, bring those to your community and use those to help drive your energy efficiency message. So you don't have to create your own program, but you can bring multiple already pre-existing programs under your specific umbrella for your community. Targeting sectors. Now, one thing I would encourage, and this goes along with a staged approach, is don't do everything all at once. Get some experience, get some successes under your belt. Target, perhaps do a specific demonstration at your local library or city hall. Do something with the schools and all at large to try and create some general awareness. But do a staged approach. Do one thing or two things at a time, and then start bringing things on as you get more comfortable and you have more engagement as the community gets more familiar with what you're trying to accomplish. Set a very specific time frame, and I have an example time frame here in a few slides that we'll go over. It's really from a pretty conservative standpoint, but it's pretty realistic at the same point of what it actually takes to get this up and going. And again, defining and measuring success. What are your metrics? Make sure you have something that's very definable, and make sure everyone agrees on what you're actually trying to define and trying to measure throughout the course of the program. So when you're working with a community energy initiative or education initiative, a lot of times we focus just on the energy components. And we don't realize that there are a lot of other components that we can fold right into that, a lot of the non-electric opportunities. There's water, wastewater, your local plants, the sewage district, all that. There's the green movement, sustainability. A lot of local communities have a strong engagement with folks who are really involved in sustainability. Fleet. Well, oftentimes we forget about this because it's not a specific, electric saver, but as part of an overall community program, it fits in very nicely, the municipal fleet. And infrastructure, street lights, roadways, parkways, not only from the roadway lighting and street lights component, but energy savings from reduced watering by using natural landscaping and planting, because you're reducing energy usage for pumping all of that water. So there's a lot of other corollary programs that you can fold into your community energy initiative. I encourage you to really consider those, because those are very helpful, actually. Use existing personnel within the community to deliver your message. Embedding things in services that are already being provided. A very good one are your local inspectors, your building and fire inspectors. If you want to get an energy message to building owners and business owners in your community, build it into the message that these folks are delivering. Again, it adds legitimacy. It's a very efficient delivery, because you're not adding personnel or adding another task. You're just adding a few more sentences and perhaps a flyer on a visit they're already making in the community. Work through the Chambers of Commerce, an excellent way to get at businesses. We've been doing it for years, but here's a place where small businesses go to get help and communicate and connect and talk to each other. So work through your local Chambers of Commerce. Again, the municipal website is where folks already go to find out information about what's going on in their town. Use that to promote what you're trying to do through your local initiative. Integrate to local events and fairs. Oftentimes, what we want to do is a kickoff event or something, and leveraging something that already exists rather than trying to gather people to a new, unique site can be a challenge. So doing something as part of another event, and it creates goodwill within the community, the organizers of that event, because they're not seeing there's something competing with their effort. They're actually seeing as you helping drive participation in something that's important to them. So this is where partnerships are really important, and trying not to create too many unique things. Oftentimes when we do a community initiative, it's so exciting, we want our own thing, and evaluation sometimes drives us to, like, we don't want this to be seen as something that other people are influencing because we want all the credit for what's going on. But to tell you the truth, evaluation is important to actually make sure our programs are successful, but on a community basis, leveraging and actually engaging folks is even more important. So make sure you partner with existing efforts, and so you're supporting each other rather than trying to create competing interests and efforts in the community. Consider water bill inserts. A lot of local utilities, you get your local water bill. You can talk about efficiency and efficient water use, which actually then results in energy savings for the community, which can potentially result in lower tax base. So there's a lot of different ways to drive the message home as to why an energy initiative in your community is important to the citizens. And it can be a personal benefit accrued to them, or it can be a benefit that's accrued to the community overall through, the non-energy benefits as well. So use the dual messaging. Okay, recycling day. Another something that people don't really consider as an energy efficiency component, but combine it with appliance recycling program. So you're doing recycling within your community, kind of work with your local utility. Many utilities already have an appliance recycling program or a turn-in program. Work off that to try and get folks to turn in their old energy inefficient appliances, combine it with an incentive towards a new appliance, but again, taking on to an existing program. Expedited permitting. Okay? A lot of times what the driver isn't going to be financial or even the fact they're interested in the energy savings, but time. Especially in the business community and new construction, whether it's residential or commercial or industrial, time is the issue with these folks. So if people can jump to the front of the line because they're following specific design guidelines or participating in a specific program, that's a very successful driver in many community initiatives. Education events. Again, behavior change is a part of all community education or energy initiatives. So it's that behavior change component. So around all of these, there's an education component that happens regularly, not just in the chambers and in our one-on-ones with businesses or residences, but it can happen in our libraries. You can do work with schools. I know in Wisconsin there's a K-12 energy efficiency program, KEEP, that has curriculum that is specifically based on energy efficiency, and then you can do projects within your schools to help educate the students. You actually results potentially in an actual project done at that school. So consider education events type of that, or even an introduction to some of your local school curriculum. And then use business to target business, our trade and professional allies. If you've ever been involved in an energy efficiency program, we're really dependent on these folks to help us deliver the message. But sometimes we forget about them when we're doing a community energy initiative. But actually work with our local contractors, the contractor community, the architectural and design community, depending on what's available, the electrical contractors, the lighting installers, the HVAC, heating and ventilation, air conditioning dealers and distributors and installers. Work with them to help you deliver your message on your community energy initiative. They're in the business of actually doing energy efficiency, so partner with them. So actually see them as a partner for your program as well. And make sure there's a real need. Actually, this is something I've seen more than once, where enthusiasm actually outweighs the need in the community, where you want so bad for something to actually happen, you don't realize that they're doing all right on their own, and we should target something else. So part of your baseline research when you're developing your program will help you inform and decide if you actually need to do something within that sector or not. So make sure there's a need before you embark on brainstorming strategies and what you're actually going to accomplish. And understand, what the needs and barriers are. Okay? There's a few themes here, and the barriers is one of them. And what we need to do to actually create change in the community through a community energy initiative is to understand what's keeping people from taking action already and helping develop strategies, whether it's an educational, whether it's demonstration, whether it's financial incentive, to help them overcome that barrier. So unless you know what those barriers are, you're not going to actually be able to create effective action within your community. And then again, target a sector, I would say initially, where you can leverage something that's already going on. Okay, so some basic, high-level program design examples. I'm sorry. So you have about 15 minutes to submit questions within the chat balloon. So we have a Q&A at the end of the session. So if you do have any questions, please make sure you utilize that, and we'll get to them at the end of the seminar. All right. So program design examples. Okay. So here's some high-level examples from programs that have existed in other communities. Energy standard for municipal buildings. Most municipalities can create their own standards for performance. Not only does this create a potential energy savings, but it sends a good message to your community that you're really cognizant and fiduciarily conservative within your community. So a lot of times that's a way to help jumpstart something, is you want to be respectful of your investment in their community. Energy codes for residential buildings. Energy code training and education. A lot of times it's our energy code officials who aren't necessarily as up to speed on the newer technologies because they don't necessarily have all the education and training opportunities that the trade and professional allies have. So, working with them to make sure that they're up to current standards and assisting them in doing their jobs. So some of that education on current technologies and current codes. Green permitting. This is a variation on the expedited permitting, actually. So if you're building to a specific standard that you can develop for your own municipality, for a specific business park, say, or TIF districts, you can actually consider different design guidelines for green permitting. And then perhaps a waiver, reduction in a fee or tax by participating in your program or incorporating energy efficiency measures into their projects. Grants and rebates. Now this is getting to the high end of a community energy program where you actually have the funds available to actually give away within your community. And typically this is only done if you're working with your local utility. If it's strictly a municipal-based initiative, it's going to be much more challenging to actually identify pools of funds to be able to distribute. But a lot of times your local utility may already have an incentive program in place, or perhaps they already participate in a larger state benefits program that they can leverage and bring even deeper into that specific community. But working with the utility to actually develop specific grants, rebates, and incentive to actually encourage energy efficiency products. You also can encourage participation in rate structures that your local utility has and different programs that your utility has available. Especially for peak demand in summer, there's AC cycling programs, real-time pricing, peak time rebates. So you can leverage already existing offerings that the utility has and just helping people take advantage of that by educating them more on the different offerings that are available. So these are different components that you can incorporate into your program design. Working with dealers and distributors in your area, again, a lot of times one of the barriers is not having enough education at the dealership level or distribution level or your local retailer in the area. So working with those folks to bring, working upstream to get things into your community. Point of purchase. You can develop community-specific type point of purchase efforts at specific local hardware stores, local big box retailers. So work with them. They're becoming much more attuned to this based on some of the Change the Light, Change the World, some of the CFL national programs. So a lot of them are much more savvy about how to do this stuff in their stores and can perhaps develop a specific one for your community. Direct installation programs. Now this is also something that is started with CFLs, and people are most familiar with kind of the CFL. There's the Porch Light campaign, there's other Change the Light, Change the World again. But there's different things you can do on a direct installation basis as well. So consider that type of program where it can get you in the door by providing a free service and pieces of equipment to help educate and actually help them understand the benefits of energy efficiency and participating in your program in that way. Doing a demonstration project. especially in a public building where folks can actually go see and actually have information. This is actually a really good thing for a renewables program, is to do a renewables installation and have a real-time display there. There's technologies now that allow for real-time display of energy being provided through that renewable resource, whether it's a wind turbine or a PV panel on the roof of the local library. So you can use it as a demonstration and education tool as part of the education awareness of your program. So again, every community program has an education awareness program tied to everything that's done to it, unlike a typical, perhaps, efficiency program where it's strictly you're focusing on getting technologies in place through rebates. So you have to kind of be the master of all things when you do a community program. Okay, so all of this links right back to evaluation. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What's definable? How are you going to track your success? So tracking is a key part. You have to measure something, but then you have to track it also. So developing some sort of tracking mechanism internally, so not just your thermometer on the town square where you're actually communicating your successes, but having something internal, even if it's a simple Excel spreadsheet, to actually track who you've talked to, what's resulted, if there's a specific energy savings resulting or specific action resulted. So you need to track it as well so you can actually measure at the end. And again, it's an awareness issue as well as an energy savings issue. So there are different ways. Again, if you do an initial kind of baseline analysis of where is the community as a whole, you can just do a broad-based survey. Where are they as a whole as far as their awareness of energy issues and environmental issues? And then you can do that at the 6-month and 12-month and 18-month mark and see if you see an increase and if your messaging efforts are being effective. So in a lot of those metrics and evaluations actually going to be based on the barriers that you've identified. So again, the evaluation, while it sounds scary, is really a tool that's helping you develop and redesign your program as you implement it as you go along. So evaluation is a really critical component and a very important part of your program. So we go into implementation, kind of the kickoff here. Okay. You want a specific definable event to start your program. You want everything that you're trying to accomplish to be easily communicated. You want very clear goals and benefits that can actually be understood by the community you're targeting, and expectations for their participation. Okay, when you're developing a program, you have specific goals, but you also want to tell them what you expect them to do as part of your program. What is their specific call to action? What's the movement that you want them to take, whether it's behavioral, whether it's installation of equipment, whatever that may be. But you need to communicate the action you want to have happen. And then again, the benefits. Make sure the benefits are in terms that they can understand. So for sustaining implementation in the long run, continuity in personnel is important, whether it's a specific individual you've identified or the members of the team that you've identified as well. So some sort of continuity in folks who are helping deliver the program from an administrative level. Regular communication, regular proactive communication, I should say. What's going on? What's the status of it? Where are we at? What are some successes? Call out people that are doing a bang-up job. Use your local newspaper. Make sure that people know what people are accomplishing and the benefits. Sustained funding. Now, keep understanding that funding is a component of this. You need to keep checking where your funding is coming from. Are you depending on, a lot of communities have ARRA funding. What's the status of that? Has it gone through all the cycles it needs to? Make sure you're keeping tabs on the funds you have available to you, and if there's any other additional funding opportunities that you can leverage. Public benefits programs are a specific source of leveraging by bringing funding through incentives to your specific community. So make sure you know what all these opportunities are. And evaluation again, how's it going? And I say this evaluation not just at the end because it's a way of proactively redesigning your program on the fly. You need constant feedback so you can change things as you see there are problems, or if something's being incredibly successful, you want to make sure you continue to do that as well. So again, don't have a single champion, but make sure you have a team, okay, because staff changes will occur, I promise you. They always do, they always will. So make sure that the team is in place, and write your plan down, especially for that contingency. If you don't have your plan written down, how is the next generation of folks who are going to implement this for you going to know what you've got going on? So it doesn't have to be a 30-page document. It can be just a high-level outline. It can be whatever it is you need to actually capture what you're trying to accomplish. But capturing that also helps folks not only implementation, but if you do a formal evaluation, I know programs that probably have funding that's been approved by their local public service commissions through their local utility will probably have to go through a rigorous evaluation that will be mandated because of the funds that are allocated for that program. So writing this plan down will help in that evaluation process because the evaluators know what you were planning, what were you trying to accomplish, what were the barriers you're trying to overcome, what were the actions that you thought would help move the market, and they can help you see if that was effective or not. And know your politics. When it comes to community programs, knowing your politics is really critical to your timeline and to your planning process. Does the city council need to approve the actions? Is it the mayor that needs to approve things? Who actually has the final write-off on what you can actually do and say within the municipal government? Who can say if you can actually get that page on the website? If there's funding that you think is available, who's actually going to make that case and actually get the approval for that funding? Know who the decision makers are and what their timelines are. Don't set your timeline unless you know what the timelines of all of your key players are. So now we're just going to jump into Cheeseburg here quickly. So it's this fictional town, suburbia, Wisconsin, about 40,000 folks. It's a manufacturing. There's a local manufacturing plant. It's in commuting distance of Milwaukee, which is our large municipality, and they want to do a community initiative, and they want to do a staged approach. So we're going to target 4 main things. We're going to look at downtown businesses, the municipal fleets, because they have a large fleet, the wastewater treatment plant, because they have a locally owned one, and they want to do something with the municipal local government offices as a demonstration site. And they may or may not do some streetlight project, depends on if the budget falls out during the planning process, if they can afford that or not. So the overall goals for Cheeseburg, they want to get the Chamber of Commerce to do an awareness event to get members along on, because they want to do some sort of energy efficiency initiative, and they want to see if that's needed or if the businesses would be interested in participating. They want to educate the local buildings operators and the fleet managers of the financial benefits for the community of adopting efficient strategies. They want to do a demonstration at a public building and work with the local utility to do an assessment of the local wastewater plant. So then they're going to target within these specific sectors. Okay, they want a specific campaign for small businesses, big business, big savings for small businesses. They want specific marketing and outreach effort focused on that. They're going to develop specific incentives for small businesses with their local utility and actually combine it with a direct install program. So they can actually provide a free service to these small businesses who oftentimes are financially strapped and really need to understand the financial benefits of going down this path. So they're going to do CFLs, programmable thermostats, and aerators for the water. So that's a therm saving on the domestic hot water side. So the goal for downtown businesses is really to help them better understand how they can actually control their own operating costs. For the municipal buildings, well, they're not going to tackle all the buildings at once. Their budget doesn't quite handle that at the moment because the city council isn't really sure kind of where they're at. So they're going to do a library retrofit demonstration, and they're going to look at solar tubes. They're going to do exterior planting for future shading. There's a light because they're an Arbor Day community, so they really focus on the trees in their community, and they think that there's also an energy benefit to the shading of buildings. And they're going to do a lighting retrofit with daylighting sensors. And there's dual goals with this specific project. They want to demonstrate a newer technology that owners and design construction industry may feel are too risky. And they want people to get more comfortable with that. So they want to see what the potential savings, what the real-time first costs are for this product. And demonstrate to staff in the municipal level that incorporating these new technologies aren't more difficult or necessarily more costly. Because a lot of times barriers are the administrative staff who don't have experience with this and don't want the risk or responsibility if something doesn't work. So they want to do this demonstration for this education component. And then for the fleet, just so happens that the local municipal utility has a natural gas vehicles program. And they want to see if they can take advantage of that for the municipal. So the idea is to have the fleet manager understand the potential savings and learn about the available gas-powered vehicle program, and also educate the community that the utility has this available, and there's retrofit opportunities as well as natural gas. They think that's a real unique component, and they want folks to understand that. And then the final thing for their first stage of their program is do an assessment of their wastewater treatment plant, because they don't think people understand the large, intense energy potential savings related to energy and pumping. So The goal is to understand the huge energy implications associated with the treatment and pumping of water, to understand ways to reduce energy through energy-efficient pumps and motors, and also to educate folks on alternative energy options because they want to look and see if there's a wind opportunity, because there's a state public benefits program that offers incentives for wind generation, and they think that they may be able to do that to help offset the energy use for the wastewater plant. So here's the timeline for our program. And again, we're considering a 24-month program. So first couple of months, we're actually going to dedicate to discussions, getting the municipality and utility all on board. Make sure it's like, is this a good thing? Is this a good fit for our community? There's a lot of buy-in that needs to take place on the community level. A lot of buy-in, so you have to plan for time for that. There's a lot of people that have to sign off and engage. And if you don't have that, it's almost not worth it, because if you don't have all the buy-in, you're going to have trouble getting engagement. Plan for research, primary and secondary. Primary research is going out on the street, talking to people, finding out what's going on, what are the barriers, what are people's perceptions. Secondary is, talking to other folks, other current research that exists, lead for neighborhood development, is it effective? Is there other research that exists, other programs that you can learn from? Go talk to other utilities that have done programs. So doing that, that research to kind of figure out how you're going to develop your program. And then this kind of happens, for the first 4 to 5 months, program design. And you can kind of compress these time frames a little. This is a little conservative, but I don't want you to spend too little time doing this, because too little time is probably the setting up for failure more than anything else. So plan time to do all of this. So actually doing your initial program design based on your research and vetting that. Once you have some initial ideas, go out to the communities you want to target. What do you think about this? Is this something you think would be interesting to you? Would you participate in something like this? Or if not, well, what would? So use it as a secondary communication tool to go out to the folks you're trying to target also. So that program design is really kind of an iterative aspect. It's not just a, here's my program design and we're going to run with it. Implementation preparation, planning for the kickoff, getting staffing in place. If you've got permission for paid staff personnel, great, get that person on board. That can be a time-consuming process as well. Get your team in place, get them part of your planning design process, make sure everyone on the team understands your program design. And then actually doing the kickoff. And then actually you can actually lay in your different programs. They don't all have to start at day one. You can start with your demonstration project first. You can lay in, you want to perhaps start your demonstration before you do the whole kickoff, so maybe your demonstration is part of your kickoff event. So you want to actually build this in. And this timeline can vary a little, but again, the idea is that you have a specific timeline laid out for yourself. And then plan for evaluation, interim and final evaluation, whether it's formal and rigorous because it's stipulated, or if it's just for your own education purposes. And adjust programs as necessary, not just at the end, but you can do it on the fly as well. The idea is then just keep on trucking. Once you start going, you got the energy, you got the community engaged, you've got some momentum, keep going. And it's going to change. And don't expect that the program you started out with is going to be the program you end with. Because you're going to see that all of a sudden you see successes, it's going to morph. You can move on to something else. So the idea is that continue to evaluate, try and get some sort of feedback on a regular basis, every 12 months if possible, if you think you're able to continue this program. And in the startup phase, get regular feedback from your participants so you can improve as you go and not just wait to the end to see if it was a success or not. So kind of a recap of evaluation, because it kind of ties back. Program design really helps feed into evaluation. And I would encourage you, if you haven't seen the evaluation webinar that was done previous to this, please go back, because it's a very good overview of the evaluation process and components. So there's impact and process. Impact is actually our energy savings and what the actions actually happen. Process is actually how we administered the program. Did things happen that we wanted to happen? The program characteristics, what we anticipated, are we overcoming the barriers that we had identified? Is implementation and administration, is it cost effective? The cost effective is a very critical component of the evaluation. So again, go back to the evaluation webinar because it talks about cost effectiveness in much more detail. But that's a critical component of making sure your program is viable for the long run. And in the end, it really comes down to 4 things: research, plan, measure, evaluate. Okay, research, plan, measure, evaluate. And those 4 components are really the key issues that go into your program design. So with that, again, the barriers to participating, okay, that's our research. Did we overcome what we thought we were going to? Was it cost effective? Did the program vary over time? Capture any changes you make in your plan. Your written plan is actually your archive of your program as well. There's specific processes. Archive that you want for archive. Was the incentive fulfillment process good? Were checks gotten to folks in a timely manner? Make sure you identify those. So again, really understand what your opportunities are, and then balance those with what's actually realistic for you to accomplish with both your time frame and the funding you have available. Make sure you know who you're trying to move. Identify the specific target sector and target audience that you want to take action. What do you want them to do? Not only define it for yourselves, but communicate it very clearly to them. What are the barriers? When you're designing something, you need to know what's keeping them from doing it naturally, and whatever you're designing your program to help them overcome that barrier. What is their tipping point that would actually help them take action? And what can you do to help overcome that? And what do you consider to be a success? What your participants think is successful for themselves is going to be different than what you think is successful for the program overall. So make sure you can define what is success for yourself. So that's kind of the end of our cheeseburger example, and we're kind of coming up, we're coming up to the end of our hour. I encourage you to visit the rest of the webinars. I know there's another one coming up that Andrea will mention as well. But again, from a program design standpoint, you really do have to plan. The program design component isn't overwhelming. You can do it. It's, research, plan, measure, evaluate. And you really don't plan to fail, you fail to plan. So it's not just getting people to take action in your community. You want them to take very effective action. So program design components where you can really help guarantee that happens.